Hey guys, Jafar here. This video is going to cover the basics of building on Rust and how to safely and quickly get your first base started. You'll want to first gather the resources necessary for building your first base. These resources will mainly be wood and stone, but you'll also want to gather metal ore to later cook up and build better items. You will also want to collect cloth and animal fat or low grade to later build items necessary for the base. Now it's time to build your hammer and building plan. The building plan will see set you back 20 wood, while the hammer will cost 100 wood. The hammer will later be used to upgrade the base to a stronger material, while the building plan will be used to lay the foundations and framework for the base. To use the building plan, you must equip it on your hotbar. Once you have the planner equipped, hold right click to open the building wheel. This wheel will let you select all the different types of structures you can place down. You'll want to only focus on foundations, walls, floors and doorways, since we'll only be using these to build our first base. Once you have your resources and tools ready, you will need to find a suitable location to build your base. But before we decide that, we must first understand why we will be building this first base. The purpose of the first base is to protect and store our resources, which will be later going towards our bigger and better base. The first base is meant to be left behind, so there is no point in building it big and wasting time and resources on it. So now we know that this first base is only just a stepping stone to our eventual big base, so we can now proceed in finding a location for it. You're going to want to build near where you will eventually set up your main base. There is no point in building on one side of the map and having to haul all your items across the map because you decided to build your main base far away. So when picking your first base location, think about the area you are in and if it has any future value. Also, it would be good to build near the outpost. This will allow you to make valuable trades for items which will help you throughout the game. You can learn more about the outpost on my getting started tutorial. So now we have covered the resources, tools and location to build our first base. All that's left is to actually build it. But first, you'll want to make sure you understand how the hard side and soft side of walls and doorways work before placing them down. As for the hard side and soft side of your walls, you'll want to correctly learn which is which so you don't end up making the mistake of having the soft side facing outwards so the raiders can easily break it down. You can also rotate the walls when initially placed down by the hammer if you did place them down incorrectly, but they can only be rotated for a short amount of time after placing them down. So when you go to place the walls, you'll want the hard side of the wall facing outside, while the soft side should be facing towards you. This can be done by placing the structures from the inside of the base, since by default the soft side will be facing you when first placing the wall down. I will give you two options for different size bases to build depending on your group size and current available resources. The first option will work for solos, groups with less resources, or a group that doesn't care about space and just wants to save on resources. This building will be a 1x2 with a triangle airlock. The exact resource cost of this base will be 3,345 stones and 557 wood, but you'll also need to get additional wood for doors later on. Start by placing the foundations down with the triangle foundation at the end of the building. Once the foundations are down, start placing the walls and doorways. As for the doorway, you'll want to place it down on the triangle foundation. This will be our airlock, which is used to slow or stop people if they're trying to raid us. Take some time to think about which side the doorway should be on and how easy it will be for someone to hide or camp it. Once you have the walls and doorways down, begin placing the floors to cover up your base. If you just want to have a base with more room or require more room for your larger group, this next base design might be your pick. This building will be a 2x2 with a triangle airlock. The exact resource cost of this base will be 4,845 stones and 807 wood, with additional wood needed for the extra doors. Start like before, placing down the foundations, but this time you'll want to add an additional 2 on the side. Next, place the walls around the base and doorways on the triangle airlock to slow or stop people from raiding us, just like the other design. Lastly, you want to place the floors above you to completely seal it off. Now you have a 2x2 base with more room than the other design, with a penalty of a higher cost to build and upkeep. Now it's time to upgrade our base. Once the base's framework has been placed down, you'll want to pull out your hammer and hold right click on the building pieces. This will allow you to upgrade the base to a higher tier of material. Ideally, you'll want to upgrade the base to stone, but if you do not have the resources for a stone base, you can always upgrade it to a wood base for now. You now should have a completely upgraded base for whatever design you went with. All that's needed now is a door to stop people from walking in. You'll want to craft 2 wooden doors and 2 key locks. Place the first door down so the door will open towards you in the base. Next, place a key lock on the wooden door and hold E on it to select the option to lock it. Place your second wooden door down so it opens outwards towards the airlock. This will make it so if you accidentally get killed with all your doors open, the raiders still can't get into your base. So you finally have a safe and secure base to hide in, for now. Ultimately, you're going to want to upgrade that wooden door to a sheet metal door, since the wooden door can very easily be raided with some beginner tools. So what you're going to want to do is build a furnace so you can cook some metal to build that sheet metal door. A furnace will cost 200 stones, 100 wood and 50 low grade fuel. Once you have the furnace, you'll want to place some wood and metal ore into it to start cooking metal fragments. Wait until you have 150 metal fragments and build yourself the sheet metal door. To replace your wooden door, hold E on the lock and remove it. When the lock is removed, you can hold E on the door to pick it up. If you are a solo, a key lock will be fine to use, but if you're in a group, think about later upgrading to a code lock so everyone in the group can open the door without needing the owner with the key. Now you have a safe door down and a furnace, you'll want to craft a tool cupboard so your building doesn't decay. You can watch my upkeep and tool cupboard guide for further information on how the tool cupboard and decay system works, so your building doesn't get destroyed. But overall, the tool cupboard will stop other people from building a base close to yours, and will tax you the resources which it costs to build your base to stop the building from decaying. The tool cupboard will also allow you to demolish placed building parts within its radius. This makes it easier to expand and fix mistakes when building. You will now want to start placing some chests within your base to hold your loot and sleeping bag, so you can respawn back into your base if you die. With the sleeping bag, you can also hold E on it to give it to a friend if you want them to respawn into your base. The sleeping bag will also have an additional 5-minute cooldown time on it when it's first placed down, so your friends can't instantly spawn up into your base. Gather the resources necessary to build your first base. Build the tools for the base's construction. Find a good location to build the first base and later move on to a bigger and better base. Make sure you understand what side of the walls is the soft side and hard side. Decide which type of first base you will want to build, the smaller base or the larger one. Place the framework down and upgrade it to stone, or wood if you're lacking the resources. Build and place the doors to prevent raiders from coming in. Place a furnace down to cook up metal fragments to build a better door. Install a tool cupboard into your base to stop raiders from building outside and to stop your building from decaying. And finally, place down your chest to store your loot and a sleeping bag to spawn back into. I hope this video has helped you build your first base and learn a bit more about the building system and how to survive. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.
Yo, what's up? My name is Sven, and today I present to you 100 tips and tricks you should know when building a base in Rust. 100 in one video is a lot, so I'm gonna try to keep it as short as possible per tip. I expect that most of you already know about half of the tips or more, although for the more newer players out there, and of course for those who are just curious and want to make sure they know absolutely everything, I made this video. Now without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Hope it's useful. Let's start with tip number 1 and the thing that you always want to do when building a base, which is to plan your base build. Pre-build it on a server or on Fortify. Make screenshots, recordings, etc. so you know what you're up to before building a base on a live server. Tip number 2. If you're looking for a good build server and all the main build servers are full, try to look for a server in a different region. Ping doesn't really matter when building, and for example the Intoxicated build server has an NA server and an EU one. One region could be full while the other isn't. You can also create your own private build server, but that will most likely cost money. Tip number 3. Always start small and expand later. It does save a lot of time to build your base from a starter straight away instead of having a separate starter base. Also, only expand your base when you know you have the materials for it. It's for example not smart to build your foundations out already and have them upgraded without actually building parts of your base on top. Tip number 4. If you're building for a bigger group, make sure you always have a second person that knows how to build the base, just in case you have to go offline. A good tip here is that if you pre-build your base on a build server, to record how to build it and share the video with your teammates. This will allow any of the teammates in worst case scenario to continue building the base. Tip number 5, an obvious one, but always make sure that you have the right amount of materials to start building your base. The last thing you want is not being able to upgrade the last twig wall on your starter, where you would have to go out and farm more just to upgrade that last twig wall. It's always better to have more materials than you need than less. For tip number 6, always make sure you're completely familiar with the build costs of your base. What I mean with this is that you don't want to end up being stuck building a huge ass base as a solo because you kind of misunderstood how much it was going to cost in reality. For example, if a base that you want to build costs 150k metal fragments, that means that you're going to have to hit 150 metal nodes to finish your base in metal fully. Now in this case we're talking about a pretty big base, but you get the idea. On tip number 7, I have a quick picture for you guys that shows how much it costs to build twig, wood, stone, metal and high quality quality metal. You can also see how much it costs to upgrade. Now, it's important to know that the upgrade order doesn't matter. For example, if you have a twig wall that you want to make metal, it will cost the same amount of metal to make that twig wall metal rather than if that wall would be stone and you'd make it metal. Tip number 8. Make sure to place your foundations on the correct height. Don't place them too low, don't place them too high. Now this also depends on the type of base that you want to build. So before building your actual base, make sure to double check you actually have the space by placing twig foundations around. Tip number 9. There's a lot of bases out there that require a perfect flat surface to build on. For example, an ice lake. When you want to build a base like this, make sure that you realize and keep in mind that you won't sometimes be able to actually build this base in a wipe, because all the ice lakes are already taken, etc. So always have a backup base you can build somewhere else that doesn't require a flat surface. Tip number 10. Always try to avoid building insanely high foundations, as they most likely make your base weaker and can be soft-sided as well. Of course, if you know what you're doing, do it, but just make sure you keep this in mind. Tip 11. Make sure to place and build and upgrade your walls facing the right side. It's important that the hard side of the wall faces outwards. This way, the wall can't be soft-sided. Now here's a quick picture of how the hard side and the soft side looks for each building material. Tip number 12. Ceilings can also be soft-sided, in case you didn't know. Make sure to keep this in mind when building outwards, for example on your shooting floor. 13. Always build an airlock. An airlock will prevent players from sneaking in your base in case you die with the door open. Here's some quick examples of how you can build an airlock in different ways. 14. When building an airlock, it's nice that you can look outside by using, for example, a shop front or a window. Remember that the window is not a default blueprint. Now sometimes if you build a smaller base, this window could potentially reveal a lot of stuff that's going on inside your base, making your base weaker so people can actually look inside and know what is where. Make sure to consider this when using windows on your airlock or anywhere else. 15. A nice way of upgrading your airlock or protecting yourself before leaving the base is by building stairs the following way. Now make sure to not upgrade the stairs before you place the wall behind it. When the stairs metal, you won't be able to place the wall anymore. The stair is pretty good and gives you quite a lot of cover, although remember that you can still die. People can still shoot you and damage you. 16. This is actually a very important one, but always make sure to code lock your TC. And with TC, I mean the tool cupboard. 17. Remember that when you place a tool cupboard, it's not like any other deployable because you cannot pick it up anymore. It's going to be permanently in its place until someone destroys it. If you do end up having to replace your TC in a different location, the best way to get rid of it is by using fire arrows or fire bullets on top, or shooting a bunch of shotgun ammo or Airlock ammo on it. Doing this will attract people and they might know what's going on, so always make sure you have a second teammate ready to place a new TC wherever you want to place the new TC at. When your TC is gone, that means that anyone outside your base, or inside or on top, has building privilege and will be able to place a new TC down. If not being done carefully, this can mess up your entire base and your entire wipe. 18. The tool cupboard is quite vulnerable as it takes one rocket to be destroyed. Now always make sure you hide it and place it in a strong area in your base so that it's the hardest for raiders to get to. 19. Also, when destroying a tool cupboard, make sure to always take out all the materials that are inside. What happens is pretty complicated to explain, but when a tool cupboard that has materials inside gets destroyed, it will forcefully put whatever materials were needed for the base to be upkept for 24 hours into the base, aka those materials will disappear. This is also why if a base is raided and a tool cupboard is destroyed, the base won't decay, or it won't start decaying until 24 hours after the raid. And this is also why that if you're raiding a big base that has only one TC and that's very costly in upkeep, when destroying the TC you'll basically end up with like 3 or 4 item slots. The items were basically forcefully put into the base. 20. There's actually some pretty advanced and unique ways to hide your tool cupboard. For that, I would really recommend to check out YouTube, as there's a lot of content creators sharing these ideas. 21. When destroying a tool cupboard that has multi-TCs, aka overlapping TCs, make sure to really know what you're doing. Make sure to have this tested as well, because as you have overlapping TCs, when destroying the main TC, the other TCs will overlap, and you won't be able to place the tool cupboard on the main base back. There's a few ways to fix this, but the easiest is by removing all 4 or whatever amount of TCs you have overlapping, and then place the TC in the main base, and then place the multi-TCs back. 22. Don't spend an insane amount of metal code locking absolutely every box in your base. It's just not worth it, especially not if you're in a big group. Now, of course, if you're playing in a smaller group and you might get online raided, it could be a good thing to do, as it could slow down raiders, as they'd have to forcefully destroy every box to check the loot. 23. Don't worry too much about where you place your tier 1 workbench. This workbench can be destroyed super easily, it has a very low durability, and the idea is that when you get a level 2 workbench, to just use melees to pick out the level 1 workbench. 24. Never place any excessive workbenches that you might not need. For example, having a level 1 workbench in your inner peak downs. And definitely not at your bunker entrance, as it would make it a lot easier and a lot more considerable for raiders to soft side, for example, your bunker or other walls, as they basically have a free workbench to repair their jackhammers close by. Tip 25. Here's by far what I think is the most useful and fast way to get rid of a level 2 workbench. Now, of course, you could always place it on top of a wooden foundation and pick that out. But if you just turned out to have placed it and the walls and everything is upgraded, what you can do is use a shotgun trap, have a teammate or yourself be unauthorized from the tool cupboard, and have the shotgun trap baited, so that it will damage the level 2 workbench. It will take a bit, but if you fill up the shotgun trap with enough ammo, you can actually do this and go AFK and come back, and the tier 2 will be gone. 26. A good idea that you want to keep in mind when placing a tier 3 workbench is to remember that it has a lot of durability. Meaning that if placed correctly on a wall that you expect to be blown when being raided, the tier 3 can be used as an extra layer of protection / honeycomb. It actually takes 2 C4 or 8 rockets to destroy a tier 3 workbench. 27. Make sure to always double check before upgrading anything to a higher quality of material. You can destroy any placed building blocks with a hammer by holding right click, but only within a maximum of 10 minutes after building the block. The timer only counts when starting to build the block. So for example, if you have twig already placed all around your base, and like let's say an hour later you're gonna upgrade everything to stone, you won't be able to remove the walls anymore. One other thing you should know is that you can always rotate walls by upgrading to a higher tier material. 28. When upgrading your base, make sure to always upgrade your roofs first. It's not only cheaper, but it's also easier, most likely, that your roofs can be splashed by rocket damage, and it's basically a cheap way of preventing that from happening. 29. Never upgrade your foundations to higher than metal. You only want to do this if the foundations are so high that when destroyed, a raider could crouch under. If he can't, don't make it higher than metal. Foundations that could potentially be soft-sided, for example bunker foundations, you always want to make armored straight away, as they are the core. 30. Always skip fancy and decorative stuff in your base. It's nice to have lights and Christmas lights and all that stuff, but it's always better to prioritize building the main base first before adding anything excessive that you don't need. 31. Always use your metal wisely when upgrading. Something that I recommend to do is when honeycombing, for example your 2x2, that's stone, use the metal first to make doors, then use the metal to create the inner honeycomb, make all the rest and leave all the rest stone, then upgrade the inside of the base to metal as well, which you can do from the inside, and at the far end upgrade the outside of your base after you did everything else. Now, you don't want to be a raid target, and you will definitely become a raid target if your entire base is metal super early in the wipe. Number 32. Make sure to always test place foundations when adding honeycomb to your base before placing the walls. What could potentially happen is that when you need to elevate a foundation and the wall is already there, you're not going to be able to place the foundation anymore. The way to do that is by firstly placing the twig foundations to see, oh hey, I can build higher here, I need to put a half wall instead. This usually happens when building on a hill or on uneven terrain. 33. Always add the same amount of honeycombing on the top and on the side of your base as it costs to raid through the doors. This way raiders won't really know what's the cheapest way, and that's good. That makes your base actually stronger. 34. A good way to save resources when needing to build half walls in honeycomb or wherever, attach the half walled floors first, as you can see in the video right now, then remove the half walls that you placed and make them into full walls instead. You want to do this because it costs the same amount of materials to upgrade a half wall as to upgrade a full wall. I know, this makes no sense. Number 35. I would pretty much never really recommend to upgrade any of the outside walls of your base to HQM. You never want to give raiders an incentive to specifically raid you, so unless you have a really direct reason to, don't upgrade anything that you can see from the outside to HQM. 36. Never build the same base every time, especially not if you play on a dedicated server every wipe. 37. Try to avoid using roofs unless you really know what you're doing. Roofs can be a pain in the ass to work with if you don't know what you're doing. 38. The same really goes for foundation stairs. They can be really weird, especially for
Dude, this game is so fun. You see that huge ship? Holy crap.